It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today it is the Thursday Club looking ahead to our trip to Turf Moor on Saturday. Words that fill any Fulham fan with dread. Yes, a trip to Turf Moor. At a time where we really need a win, going somewhere we haven't won since 1951 is not exactly ideal. However, we don't believe in curses here. We're very rational people and we would never let something like that get to us. I'm joined by Jack Collins. Hello.
Hello, Sammy. I'm really glad that you said looking ahead rather than looking forward to our trip to Turf Moor, because I don't think there's many looking forward to. I think the thing is that, you know, obviously there's a dreadful record at the ground, right? And I know we'll come on to this later on. But I think for many years, we looked at this and everyone was quite excited about going to Burnley, not because it was going to be, 3 points, but because it's quite a good away day. You know, you go to the cricket club, there's the whole shebang around the stadium, right? And everyone enjoyed that for a while. And now it's a bit like, just win. Like that you speak to people, and for years it'd be like, oh, I'm quite looking forward to going to Burnley. Obviously I spent quite a lot of time in Lancashire where, my wife's parents are from. But this time round, it feels like everyone you speak to is like, no chance. Absolutely not. Like, I don't want anything to do with this game. 3 points and get out. And that is a shift in dynamic, I think, in terms of what it's been like the last couple of years.
It's just an interesting one because I think previous, you normally consider going up to Burnley and getting a result, especially Burnley of old, Sean Dyche Burnley, you'd be like, that's a bonus. Whereas on Saturday, this is absolute must-win territory for Fulham. That is because, Jack, of what happened on Sunday against Crystal Palace. I'm going to open up the floor to you here because if you watch the quick take, you'll have noticed me and Dan trying to record that in a hurricane. What you wouldn't have noticed, though, is that Jack kind of walked in to where we were filming about 4 or 5 minutes in, and just with rage upon his face. I was so tempted to be like, come on in, Jack, but I was like, oh, we've kind of half set it up. If you'd have been there 4 or 5 minutes earlier, I think we'd have been like, sit down, Jack. As it is, you've had 3 or 4 days now to maybe compose some thoughts, maybe get over it a little bit. So I'm going to open it up to you. Hit me. What were you angry about from Sunday?
I was really, really angry. And I've not seen worse managerial changes from a substitutions perspective in a long time. It was like every single one of the subs was designed to wind me up. And look, I'm not going to sit here and kind of stress that, this is the end. I've seen some really over the top takes, like Marcus Silva has to go. It's taken too long since we did these kind of things. There's too much going on. He's kind of made these many mistakes too many times. I don't buy into all of that, right? Like, I still maintain that if the club can get Marcus Silva to sign a new contract, he was the man I would like to be in charge at the helm going forward, right? So I'm about to criticize him quite heavily, but I don't think that should be taken out of context in that we need the manager to go, right? That shouldn't be put in the same sentence. I think, though, he got a lot of this wrong at the weekend, and I think it cost us big style because, the game opens up, and actually, I think from a neutral perspective, having now watched it back, it was a relatively good game of football. Not necessarily in terms of very, very high quality, but it was, there were chances at both ends. The teams were, battling in the middle of the park. There was a lot to like about it from a neutral watching it. And there would have been a lot of neutrals watching it at 4:30 on a Sunday, which was a weird time for Fulham Palace at the best of times. But you look at the game and, the early... The Palace goal is incredibly well worked, right? Like, and I remember at the time being like, wow, okay, there's not loads you can do about that. Yes, maybe we should get out to Wharton quicker to close down the pass, but it's a lovely punch through ball. It comes back to Nketiah and he sticks it away in the corner, and not loads you can do about it. Fulham score a wonderful, wonderful equaliser, right? And I was hearing some comparisons of this. Dean Jones, my co-host on Ranks FC, tweeted saying he was there for Kasami's goal at Selhurst Park, and he was like, I think this is better. And I was like, well, okay, I'm not necessarily sure I agree with you.
I'm sorry,
but let me look at some logic here for a second, right? The goal that beat that Kasami goal, not just a goal of the month, the goal of the season as well, was a really intricate passing move from Arsenal that ended with Jack Wilshere scoring, right? This is very similar, right? Like the actual flicks and tricks around the box, the way that there's that interplay, the movement from Harry Wilson to open it up, and then the finish with the outside of his foot. I can see why there would be comparisons made to that goal, which obviously did, win goal of the month and goal of the season. Now, whether you think that was a farce or not is up to you, and I personally think it was. So I don't necessarily agree with Dean, but I think the fact that you were putting it in that conversation is quite something within itself. And it's a little bit annoying that it's one of those goals that's going to go down for naught. Yeah. There's been a lot of those in the Premier League this season. The Richarlison one against Arsenal, the Tyler Adams one against Sunderland, all going to be great goals in losing causes. And Harry Wilson now goes into that pile as well. But I do think that, at the start of the second half, Fulham were in the ascendancy, completely dominant. And the goal, in inverted commas, when it came from Emile Smith-Rowe, felt like just reward for the way that Fulham were playing and the way that we were dominating the game. And obviously that goal is ruled out for offside. Now, I'm not going to sit here and criticise offsides because they're objective, not subjective. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, it's unfortunate it's his toe offside, but it is what it is, right? There's a rule. And the problem is that Fulham's heads seemed to drop after the goal went down. And I don't really understand why. We'd had such control of the game at that point. We were really, really pushing forward. And then the substitutions began, right? And Emile Smith-Rowe going off felt weird because he'd been at the heart of so much good about Fulham. And then the sort of changes in the attacking line. So Kevin comes on the left-hand side, which I have no problem with. Chukwueze had been doing very, very well down there. But actually in the first half, one of the interesting things about it had been that Chukwueze had drifted into the middle and shifted Emile Smith-Rowe out onto that left-hand side. And that was where the goal came from, him driving into the middle of the park. So at that moment, when Kevin came on, I was expecting Samuel Chukwueze to sort of walk to halfway across the pitch and stay where he was, right? Like to hold the fort in the middle and be like, right, you were very good. You're very effective in the 10. Palace are terrified of you. Every time you pick up the ball, there's players scrambling to get around you and you're sort of dancing past these challenges. So him to keep walking and then move Harry, who'd been relatively effective on that right-hand side, into the middle meant that all three of them were lost. So there's a thing about positions. And look, I understand you try and change the angle of attack, and we saw that with the Chukwueze and Emile Smith-Rowe swap in the first half. But there's also an element of, you are based in positionism, right? Like Harry Wilson having, Tete overlapping him, having a player inside, he knows where his points of relation are, right? So you move him from that position into the middle, you have to immediately switch all of that. It's not that it's impossible, but from where he had and the spaces he was attacking, he's suddenly got to realign himself with loads and loads of different players moving around him in different ways when he'd been out wide all game. I think with Chukwueze, because he'd spent a fair amount of the time drifting into that central part, there was much more of a sense that he would have been able to pick up that role very quickly, and especially because so much of what Fulham were doing was going through him anyway. So I think that the first mistake is moving Chukwueze over to the right and Wilson inside to accustom for Kevin, when I don't think you needed to make that Chukwueze and Wilson switch. The second thing is, and this was talked about on the quick take because I watched it, but Raul was limping from the 50th minute mark. Yeah. And, you mentioned the fact that Calvin Bassey played a ball through and it went over the top, and Raul just sort of threw his hands up in the air and was like, I can't run for that. I don't have the facilities. So for every substitution then to not be Raul and it being like, surely. And obviously you come to the one at the end with Adama, and Dan was raging about this, right? But at the time, I was like, Adama's going to come on up top for Raul. And look, I don't like Adama through the middle. I don't like him in the 9. But at the time, I could get the logic of doing that, right? Fulham weren't having loads and loads of joy with crosses. It wasn't like we were winning loads of headers in the box. Maybe it was about getting the ball and getting the runners in the centre of the park that would allow us to try and get beyond that back line. So for the 8 to come up rather than the 7 on the substitution board, and for it to be Harry rather than Raul, I mean, blew my mind. I think it is semi-negligence to leave now Raul on for 90 minutes, not just in terms of Fulham's chances of winning the game, but also if he's struggling that much, he's having to play 90 minutes of every game because, ultimately you don't trust the replacement that Fulham have brought in. And you can see him genuinely struggling from injury. I don't think that's particularly sensible management from Marco. To leave him on there, I think is borderline. You're looking at not treating your players with the respect that they deserve. Now Raul also could have asked to come off, right? Fine, but I think if we can see in the stands that he's not moving correctly, right? If you can see that on the TV cameras, you can see all of the things going on. Then Marco must be able to see that Raul is not moving freely. And even if he doesn't trust Jonah Kustisaro, which is weird in itself, given the cameo that he had against City, even if he doesn't trust him to not bring another player on in that gap to be able to try and change it, I don't know. It felt very, very strange for me. A point was being proved. And if a point is being proved at the detriment of points, I really struggle with that. Yeah, on top of that, I thought that Iwobi's race was run, and you know me, I very, very rarely criticise Alex Iwobi. I thought he was excellent in the game generally, but I thought his legs had gone by the end of it. So to leave him on and push him into the wide areas rather than, bringing on fresh legs at that point felt weird. Taking him off, taking Smith Rowe off instead of Iwobi felt odd in some ways. Then moving Josh King in to kind of replace Harry and shifting Harry back out wide and change it all over again. And Sander Berge coming off for Sasha Lukic. While I understand the potential backlash that Marco would have got if he'd taken Iwobi off for Lukic at that moment when we're chasing a game, I also think you have to bear in mind the state of the players on the pitch in front of you. And by that point, you could see it with Iwobi because his touch gets heavy and his touch is silk, right? Like every time he gets the ball in the first half, it's trap dead. And by the end of the game, it's starting to run away from him in spaces. It's like one of the first signs of fatigue that you can see. So I thought leaving him on was wild. I thought leaving Raul on was wilder. I thought that not bringing Kusiasari on was strange. I thought that taking Sander Berge off, who was having one of his best games and had been the player winning the ball at the front post at set pieces, felt like a weird one. And then, to not be able to sort that out and have Josh King marking Mark Gay when it comes to the front post on that corner, I don't know if I'll ever understand it if I'm being perfectly honest. But I think that people can criticize, they can complain about the decisions, they can complain about the offside or whatever it was, and that's all fine and well and good. But I'm quite comfortable saying that as much as I love him and as much as I want him to sign the contract and stay, I think the reason we lost that game on Sunday was because of Marco Silva.
Yeah, which in my opinion, we've had this a few times. Like Marco can make mistakes, like players can make mistakes, and I'm sure
he'll chalk it up to a mistake. That's totally
fine.
He'll
be the first one to look at Sunday and go I got a few of those wrong. I've got a bit of a theory of Marco's substitutions. They're very hit and miss, aren't they? Because obviously we talk about a lot how he nails his substitutions. I feel like Marco does his best work almost when he's on the back foot, but when he's made maybe either poor starting choices, he's very good at seeing the problems and fixing them. Where I'm not 100% sure Marco is as good is the scenario that we found ourselves in on Sunday, whereby actually 45 to 60 minutes, I'd say we were the dominant team. We obviously had thought we'd scored and a deserved goal as well. And if you look actually on the balance of play on stats and charts and graphs and stuff,
Fulham. Look at the momentum chart. It's nuts.
Fulham had the majority of that play. Where sometimes I think Marco can get unstuck is when actually things are going all right. Is how to build, how to make this team that's doing pretty well right now, but people are running a little bit out of gas. How can you add 5-10% to that? Marco seems to be best when it's almost like, oh my word, this is all absolutely broken. Let's
tear it all up and almost
let's fix these problems. I think Marco sometimes, in my opinion, might be a bit generalizing, just struggles sometimes to just add incremental improvements to something that's doing all right. And quite often it ends up in Marco actually breaking something that's working quite well. I mean, Palace made those changes, didn't they? And Jefferson Lerma came on in the centre of the park, and I thought actually added a lot of solidity to Palace. I felt like they were quite easy to play for. I thought Jefferson Lerma came on. I don't think he's the greatest player in the world, but he just seemed to...
He was effective, though.
He was very, very effective, you're right. And I feel like then Marco was forced into making a change because he could see that had swung some momentum back Palace's way. And I think Marco was trying to work out how do you do this. But he just... And I said this in the quick take, I just think he overthought it a little bit. If you think that Smith Rowe can't cut it, and for what it's worth, I agree with you. I disagree with Marco. I think Emil Smith Rowe could have done 90. But if you're going to do that, Josh King's right there on the bench, can play number 10. That's his position. We know that Harry Wilson can play in the 10, but it was you moved too many chess pieces by that point, and all of a sudden, Fulham having to start from scratch, learn where everyone was on the pitch.
All the fluidity from the front line went, and I think if you just make a swap that's moved Chukwueze inside, bring Kevin on the left-hand side, because Smith Rowe and Chukwueze had been dovetailing anyway, I feel like everyone sticks to their thing, and you just suddenly have an extra weapon on that left.
Yeah.
Right? I thought he overthought it. And I think you maybe could have dropped Smith Rowe into the midfield, and something you've been kind of calling for as a potential option to play Josh King and Emil Smith Rowe together alongside a number 6. I don't know if this was quite the game for it, if I'm honest, just in terms of the way that the pendulum swung a little bit towards the end. But even at that moment, to bring him off when he felt like he was really integral to a lot of the good things we were doing, and bear in mind, 5 minutes earlier, just had a goal ruled out. I don't know. It just felt. And look, maybe Marco knows. Not maybe, for sure. Marco knows better than we do about the levels of fitness and where we're at. But I would also expect, given how he's had a full pre-season now, and yeah, he hasn't played loads and loads of minutes this season because Josh King has been so good. But you would expect Emil Smith Rowe to be up to speed by now in terms of his ability to stay on the grass for longer than 60 minutes. And perhaps there's something underlying that we don't know about, but. I mean, I think that if that's something, and you're looking at it and going, yeah, Smith Rowe can't do more than 60 minutes. Well, neither can Raul, and he's playing 90. Yeah. So, like, if we're going to make one, it's apples and oranges in some ways. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. So, yeah, I just came out of the game so incredibly frustrated because I think that Palace shut up shop, right? Like, I think that they looked at it and thought JD Canvo coming on for Nat Klein, who I thought had a very, very good game, by the way. But JD Canvo coming on for Nat Klein felt like they were trying to close the game down, but like take the point and we'll just all move on.
They were doing the classic thing that away teams do when they're defending a lead. Palace were taking ages over goal kicks. We're quite happy to punt away the ball. Palace, I think it's a bit much to say they were playing for a point, but I think they were very much of the mindset, 3's a bonus, 1 point's great.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like, look, we shut up shop for 15 minutes and we try and nick one right at the end on the counter or from a set piece as Fulham try and push to win it, which is obviously exactly what happened.
And if there was a time where we should have been on top, given Palace's schedule, given their injury problems and everything, if the fact that Palace were the much more likely team to score from about 65 minutes onwards...
They were tiring, and we let them take control back of the game in the way that they wanted, and I think that
we'd got ourselves. I think had it been 1-0 to Palace, look, we know what Palace can do. They can get an early lead, like we saw last season, and then they can just hit you on the counter attack. The thing is, Fulham have done the hard part.
Yeah, we've got the equaliser.
We've got the equaliser, which is so hard to do. And actually, at that point, the game was there for the taking, and I think that's the massive missed opportunity here. And this is the first result this season where I've really thought, actually, that's not good enough. We needed 3 points, especially, like Palace are a good team. They're in fourth.
I think you say that at home against a side like Palace, you're looking for a point minimum.
And it should be 3 given the circumstances that.
Yeah,
Palace
I mean, I also think I watched the Palace United game a couple of weeks ago, right? And what we saw in that game was a Palace side, and yes, they were after European duty, and United weren't, in a way that was not quite the same because it had been all Premier League in midweek. But I think the point still stands. They tired massively in that second half. And Fulham should have been in a better position from a physical perspective to take advantage of that. And the fact that we didn't, I think, can really only be chalked up to the tactical decisions that we made in this game. And like, I don't have loads more to add. I was incredibly frustrated. I was very, very frustrated with the performance we gave away at Everton. I thought that performance, not necessarily the result. Yeah. I don't think it's not necessarily a terrible thing to go and lose at Hill Dickinson, but the performance we put in that day, I was very angry with. And I came out of this game like really, really raging at the decisions that were made, because I think rather than kind of losing, or rather than Palace winning the game, Fulham lost it.
Yeah.
And I think we did that to us. We kind of snatched defeat from, maybe not the jaws of victory, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we will take a break there. Afterwards, we'll look ahead to Burnley on Saturday. Jack?
Yes, Sammy?
What's your favourite Disney character?
Ooh, maybe Goofy.
Give me another Disney character.
Mickey Mouse.
Well, you could meet both of those on a Disney cruise. And right now, My Kind of Cruise have a special offer on Disney cruises, which, look, you've got a honeymoon coming up.
I do. Yeah, I mean...
Disney cruise, £1 deposit. You can discover the magic of... You got a honeymoon coming up. You can discover the magic of Disney Cruise Line, epic family adventures at sea, beloved characters, and world-class dining. It's everything you want. You're on a cruise, you've got all your favourite Disney characters, and you've only got to spend £1 on the deposit.
Phenomenal. And my wife.
And your wife, yes.
It sounds great, mate.
What's her favourite Disney character?
I actually don't know, but maybe like Pluto.
Okay. I'm sure Pluto. I'm sure they're all there.
If Pluto's not there, I'd be furious.
Pluto will be there. It's a Disney cruise. Right now, My Kind of Cruise have 15 different Disney cruise options, family-friendly adventures, amazing dining, world-class shows and tropical destinations, and they've got flexible interest-free monthly payment options. Go to mykindofcruise.com, use the code Fulhamish for an exclusive discount, and you can also browse all of their cruises on their Google Play or Apple App stores. Go to mykindofcruise.com, use the code Fulhamish. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. Sammy here on the Thursday Club with Jack Collins. This might be the last Thursday Club in studio that you and I do for absolutely ages.
Yeah, for quite some time.
We've only just realised this before we recorded the podcast. You're going on a honeymoon.
I am.
Boxing Day?
I'm going on Boxing Day and I'm back sort of midway through January.
Yeah. Obviously,
there's no Thursday Club next week because, well, there is a Thursday Club, but it's going to be from Newcastle after the game.
Yeah. And then I'm having a baby and it's due early Feb, but I'm utterly convinced it's going to be early.
Yeah, we could be off for a while.
Mid-Jan, and then I'll be straight into, I mean, as much as I, love doing Fulhamish, I will have a couple of weeks paternity leave probably.
Reasonable.
Might have to miss a Fulham game or two. I'll be back, obviously,
Yeah, we'll work it out. We'll deal with the logistics later.
Yeah. So, there's a lot going on for both of us in the next few weeks. So, Thursday Club will continue.
Yeah, there will be Thursday Clubs. It just might not be Sammy and I sitting next to each other in a studio for a little while.
Yeah, which is obviously
sad
and a shame. But
we'll be back.
Life goes on.
Come March, we'll steam back into this. We're full, full steam ahead.
Yeah.
And just as Fulham's European charge picks up some pace.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have a baby. You'll have had a honeymoon.
Yeah.
Well, the Thursday Club would be in a
Thursday
great
Club
place.
will be right back.
Yeah,
we'll be right back alongside you.
I'll be very, very tired.
Yes, you will. Yeah. I was going to try and give you some advice, but I assume the answer is just nah. Like you'll just be knackered, so that's fine.
People keep saying to me like, try and bank some sleep.
You can't bank
sleep. It's not. I don't know. It's not money. I can't put it in a savings account and use it later with interest.
Yeah,
just don't worry.
I think it's don't come into it on the back of a 2-week bender. I think is effectively the.
Yeah. Well, it's Christmas.
Well, that's a bit different. You've got a bit of a gap between there and here, right? I think that's what they're getting at. But I mean, look, it's gonna be for you. I'll have to get some guests in while I'm away, and I'll have to get some guests in while you're away. It's gonna be fun. We'll see how we go.
If anyone's got any spare old Fulham baby grows, need to start early.
Is that a thing?
It's gotta be. Gotta be.
Yeah, mate, get down to the club shop.
Yeah. Right, let's get into discussing Burnley on Saturday. What's going on with Sky at the moment? Have you seen what the Super Sunday is this weekend, by the way?
No.
Brentford Leeds.
Nice.
Obviously,
the Stuart Dallas derby.
Yeah, Fulham Palace was a bit of a rogue one, and then they've stuck Fulham Burnley as the kind of Saturday tea time game. Look, I'm happy. I think Fulham's on the box 6 times in a row over the new year by my calculations, which is not very usual for Fulham, particularly in the Premier League. Look, this is not a match that I think any of us are particularly looking forward to. As you kind of mentioned at the top, this Burnley match, we have to win. They are on a stinking run, 6 losses in a row. There's the Scott Parker element in there as well. No doubt we'll get on to him. A Turf Moor hoodoo to break. And Fulham just really needs 3 points, because this is actually, you look at these next 3 games, we're playing teams below us in the table, and sure, you could argue West Ham and Forest and maybe in slightly false positions. I don't think they're going to be there come the end of the season. This is a massive opportunity. We missed one on Sunday against a tired Crystal Palace. We have to, in my opinion, I don't think you can look at anything less than 7 points as a success from the next 3.
Yeah, I think you're probably about right. I think it's really interesting seeing kind of how this kind of shakes out. We sat here before the Sunderland game, and I said that I would have taken a point before kickoff, and you were like, no, it needs to be 3, and obviously we get the 3 that we need. But Sunderland on a very off day. I don't think anyone's under any illusions that anyone's shaking any hands for a point here, right, at Turf Moor. It's 3 or bust in so many ways. And there's narrative elements of it. We can talk about the Scott Parker of it all. I don't think we necessarily need to go into it too much. There's enough water under the bridge now that I'm a bit
I'm a bit over the Scott Parker thing now. It happened. Drew wrote about it on an article on Fulhamish today. Sure, he left us under, I think Drew put it right. He said under kind of suspect circumstances. Cheeky, I think, was his word about how Scott Parker. Yeah, look,
I'm still not comfortable with that. I still think that was bad. I still think the holding out for trying to get the club to sack you to get a payout so you could join another team is not a great vibe. And I will stand by that line, right? And until my dying day, but. Also, loads of stuff has happened since then.
And we've
Scott
got,
Parker managed in Belgium since then.
Yeah, and
anyone remember that?
Who is it? Was that
Club Brugge?
Oh, Club Bruges. Yeah, was it Union Saint-Gilloise? It was Club Bruges, wasn't it?
Yeah, that went well.
But
on, mate.
Yeah, a lot of water is under the bridge, and we had those kind of big, feisty Scott Parker moments in that season when we played Bournemouth twice, and we all laughed when he lost 9-0 at Anfield, and the way that finished. I mean, I must admit, I slightly misread Burnley this season. I actually, if you go back on my X, and this is definitely one that I probably should delete late at night when no one's watching, but I thought Burnley might be all right this season. I looked at the way they defended last year, 16 goals they conceded in the Championship, and obviously they did get 100 points, even if they did eventually finish second to Leeds, who I think have got a point or two more than them. I just thought that defensive record would stand them in good stead, because ultimately you can kind of bore your way to Premier League survival, win tight games 1-0 and scrape draws here and there. And in a way, that has been Burnley's season. They're not conceding tons and tons and tons of goals, but they're just scoring almost none. Yeah,
I mean, look, their only route to goal seems to be Zion Fleming at the moment, and I think that's probably something that's destined for the drop if that's your situation. Look, I think you can. There are a couple of elements at play there, right? One of them is that last year, that entire incredible defensive campaign was built around 3 players, right? James Trafford, CJ Egan-Riley, and Maxime Esteve. Now, Esteve is still there, but the other 2 have gone. So it's very difficult to build another defensive axis off the same thing when you lose 2 of the best players that you have in terms of doing that. Their top scorer was Josh Brownhill, gone, right? Like, there was a lot of rebuilding to do. Now, I actually think that Burnley signed some pretty smart players. I think that Ugachukwu and Florentino Luis as a pair coming into that midfield alongside Josh Cullen, I was like, yeah, I quite like that. Like, there's some real verve in that. Florentino Luis has been a player that I've really liked for a long time. I linked him to Fulham maybe 6 years ago when he was, bopping around at Benfica doing his thing. And I still think that if they get relegated, that's one that Fulham should probably look at, if I'm being completely honest. But I think that they are good players. I think Ugachukwu is capable and physical at this level, and someone who's capable of making it in the Premier League, and Florentino Luis has done pretty well, and Josh Cullen's a perfectly good conductor, right? Like, for a 16th, 17th Premier League team, I don't think you want him to be the guy, and I say that in full confidence that he's the guy for my international team, but in terms of, I think he's a capable Premier League player. The problem is that you can't just have capable Premier League players. You have to find some magic from somewhere, and I'm not quite sure where that's coming from a Burnley perspective right now. It does feel, and look, to take your point about boring teams to death, that is fine, but you still need to win some games 1-0.
Yeah.
And I feel like what we know about Scott Parker, and look, there is space for him to have grown as a manager in the period since he managed us in the Premier League. I will take that. But what we know is that when times get tough, what he tries to do is come into the shell and defends that, box and kind of dig out the 0-0s and hope for the best, rather than kind of allowing any attacking talent that option to shine, that ability to, to go and make something happen. And again, I think maybe that's changed a bit. I don't think it's quite as stringent as we saw it at Fulham that year, but I still don't think there's enough there in the attacking talent to get this Burnley side out of trouble. And whilst they are not an easy nut to crack, I think that we've started to see the cracks appearing in recent weeks, because, they did get those 2 back-to-back wins a couple of games ago.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at that and think, okay, was that a moment for them? Then they lose 6 in a row and you're like, oh, okay, maybe that wasn't the moment that they expected. I just think that there isn't enough in the tank. They're not going to go and spend loads in January to try and fix it. If I was to say that 2 sides I think are doomed are Wolves and Burnley, I don't think even if they beat us this weekend, my opinion would change on that.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what makes it such a must-win game from a Fulham perspective.
Yeah, and I think you see, like, a good example is the game that they played at the G-Tech a few weeks ago, where they nearly they were quite close to grounding out a 0-0 draw. It was 0-0, I think, first 80 minutes. Then Brentford went 1-0 up, and Burnley then got a penalty. And
penalty either end, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was penalty either end, almost within minutes of each other. And then they went and lost 3-1. The problem with trying to keep it tight, shut up shop, and grind out draws is often when you're playing Premier League teams, they've all got match winners in them, players that can make something happen out of nothing. And they found that a little bit to their detriment. A lot of their losses, they're not they're not getting hammered every week.
No.
They're not losing 4 or 5-0. Sometimes it's just the odd goal in 3 or something like that. That was exactly what happened at Newcastle. They got a consolation.
Yeah.
They got battered by
Although,
Newcastle.
to be honest, they should, with 10 men, have equalised.
What a chance.
They should have equalised. I don't know why Jadon Anthony doesn't just head the ball.
Yeah.
But that shows like there's something in there, right? Like partly it's because Newcastle are a little bit frail at the moment, and I think that's a weird thing in itself. But it shows that they can create and they can cause havoc in the box. And look, it's not something we've been great at dealing with over the course of this season, right? Just like scrambles in our own box. We've got to be wary of that. That, you know, even if we're a goal ahead going into the 90th minute, they will loop some balls in, lob some balls in. Fulham have to be sharper at trying to deal with these things. And it's not been something we've been totally switched on with all year long.
Yeah. They do have 2 players missing, Kyle Walker and then Lucas Perez, both suspended.
That's a huge benefit for them not having Lucas Perez playing, because it means that Kinsley Hartman will come back in at left back, who I think has been their best player all season long, to be honest.
Yeah. Obviously, Kyle Walker isn't quite who he once was, but he's
been a big leader for this team.
Yeah, I that does feel like quite a big miss for them in some ways, just to say more from the leadership point of view, really, because when they picked him up, I remember thinking that was quite a smart signing in lots of ways. Like, sure, he's not the Kyle Walker of old, the legs have gone a little bit, the "you'll never beat Kyle Walker" motto is not quite as accurate as it once was. I think actually Adama Traore pretty much put that to bed in that game last season at the Etihad. So they're 2 big misses for them. For Fulham, this is the final game with the AFCON boys. There was...
Start them all.
Yeah. Obviously, the AFCON deadline is Monday. Nigeria don't start their matches until 2 or 3 days into AFCON. Technically, they need a 6-day window. Monday is an 8-day window. And so therefore, I think I put this on X and a couple of other people as well. Like, is there not a chance that the AFCON boys could technically be available for the Newcastle game? It would still give them 6 days preparation for that first game for Nigeria. However, Jack Kelly asked that to Marco Silva at the end of last week's press conferences, and he absolutely straight batted it and just said, nope, they will not be there. Unless there is some very, very clever thing at play from Mark.
I'd be surprised.
But I'd be surprised. I think generally clubs don't mess with this. Obviously, United and Bournemouth are trying, aren't they? I think to get their players for the Monday Night Football after the deadline.
That's slightly different. Like, as in the Monday as opposed to the Wednesday, I think is a different thing. Look, I bear no grudges about players going off to play for their countries, right? Like, it's the greatest honour I think you can have in football. AFCON is a massive, massive tournament. And I especially think for the Nigeria boys, considering they've missed out on qualification for the World Cup, this is really the only opportunity they're going to get to go and try and win something or prove themselves in a Nigeria shirt this year. They have a shot. Like, as in if they want to be there and actually try and turn the national sentiment around their national team around, because it's pretty low at the moment, given what happened in the CAF playoffs. Like, I don't begrudge them that whatsoever.
No, I sort of think that they could go and play an international qualifier with less than 6 days preparation.
Yeah, but it's an international tournament. Like, that goes on for 3 weeks. If you're going to
play, I sort of think if you're going to play it mid-season, that there should be 4 or 5 days is more than enough for players to turn around and go play a game in Morocco as well. They're not traveling to South Africa. They're traveling to Morocco, which is we all know where Morocco is. Don't need me to explain it to you. I personally think that
I think that's the kind of decision should be given to the players. And if they're like, we want to go and we need to go and make camp and actually make sure that we're engaged in this. I have no bother with that.
The control here really is with it's down to the Nigerians, and why would they say yes?
Yeah,
why would they?
Like, what if one of them picks up an injury in that game?
Yeah, why would they agree to it? So it's fine. Anyway, the point is they're available. It's their final chance, as we say. Almost certainly. Well, I guess in some ways, are you thinking one eye on what we do without them? Or
No. You start them all for the time you have them. Like 100%. Considering how good Chukwueze was in the last game, considering that the Bassi and Iwobi are both pretty integral parts of the way that we play, we're going to have to find solutions, right? Like, without them. that's okay. We're going to have to find those solutions, right? Like that is the end of it. Like there's no mucking about. And actually the fact that it's a Carabao Cup game, I know it's an important Carabao Cup game. I'm not kind of trying to take down from that, but we've seen rotation in those games before. Like I think even if, they were available, Jorge Cuenca might be like, hang on, like these are my opportunities to show what I can do. Like maybe I should be playing in this game, for example. So I think that we'll see those changes made in the Newcastle game. And we'll start to see what what Fulham are going to do. It almost gives you not necessarily a soft launch. That's probably the wrong word because it's a really important game in Fulham season, and chasing the Carabao Cup is a big thing. But I also think that it comes with its own sort of freedom in terms of being like, right, we've got a cup game to kind of work it out. If we go out there and we put it all on the line and it works, and suddenly we're like, whoa, okay, we're going to come into that game against Forest with real renewed optimism and vigour around what's happening. So I think you stick with what we've got for the time being. I think Iwobi plays in the 8. I think Chukwueze starts on the left-hand side again, I would say. And Calvin Bassey starts at left centre-back. And, basically, I would imagine that at least Bassey, but maybe two of them get 90 minutes in this game.
There's not actually an awful lot of need to change. The starting lineup worked to a point on Sunday. It was more the changes that we made. I think Emil Smith-Rowe has been very, very positive.
I think Smith-Rowe keeps his spot.
Yeah, you'd imagine. Obviously, Chukwueze did well on the left. Wilson's working on the right. Raul's our only option up top, and there's obviously I guess we'll see what's the deal with left back, because obviously Castagna came in for Sessegnon. I didn't think Castagna was awful.
I actually thought he played better on the left-hand side than he has done for much of his time on the right this season.
I thought so too.
I thought he looked very comfortable. We know that's obviously where he plays for Belgium. I thought he looked very good over there. He was absolutely fine dealing with the issues that Palace caused down that right-hand side. So, I mean, look, it was, as we say, Nat Klein rather than Daniel Munoz. So there is a slight difference in the way that they play. He's more of a passer than someone who's going to drive up and down the touchline all game. But I thought Castagna did really well. And if Sessegnon isn't back, then I would have no problem playing Castagna in there again.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know why, but on the right, it feels like Kenny Tete is so crucial. But on the left, felt like Castagna did a job. Obviously, we know that Robbins...
I would prefer Sess to be there.
Yeah.
But if he isn't, then I'm okay with Castagna.
And we know that Anthony Robinson is nearing. They did a...
Also, take this as slow as you need. Like, as in, do not aggravate this injury again.
Yeah.
Like, the poor soul. Yeah. Like, just make sure that he is back and fully fit before we throw him on the pitch. I do not want a repeat of the Cambridge United situation.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct on that one. It's interesting AFCON being so early, by the way, just going back to it, because normally it's January, right? So it's snuck up on me a little bit, the fact that it's pre-Christmas that we're losing the players for. In terms of Carabao Cup, there's actually a chance that if we reach the semi-finals, the boys might be back for both legs. The semi-final first leg is the week commencing the 12th of January, so you'd imagine that's going to be 13th, 14th. If they got knocked out either in the quarterfinals or the round of 16 or the groups, it's only if they make the semi-finals that they wouldn't be available. Yeah, and given
look, I'm going to put this on paper. I wish them deeply well. I hope Nigeria win it.
Yeah. I mean, quarterfinals would. I'd shake your hand on quarterfinals.
No, as in, obviously, it would be lovely to have them back, and I totally get that. But also imagine the squad vibe, and imagine the happiness that would bring to so many people. I genuinely, with all of my heart, hope they go and win it.
Yeah, I'm 50-50. I'm obviously, it'd be nice for them, but also, I want Fulham's
I want our players happy.
I want our players back. I want our players playing for
There's
Fulham.
our difference. You want the players back, I want the players happy.
Right, let's go into some emails. We've got a bit of time for this, which is nice. And I wanted to come on to this one because it's related to what we were just talking about. Arthur Hurren. Hello, Fulhamish, long-time listener, first-time emailer. Given Berg and Lukic clearly don't enable us to play the progressive football that Marco wants us to play, and with AFCON rapidly approaching, do we see this as a time to try Smith-Rowe behind Josh King in that Iwobi role? His recent performances have shown he's fighting for a starting role, and his new desire to press makes him seem like the best alternative to that Berg-Lukic pivot. Thoughts from Arthur Hurren.
So, I don't know how this is going to go down as a comment, but I kind of prefer the idea of Josh King playing there.
Well, I've been thinking that, but as well, I could see it work. I don't know why, but ESR gives me kind of Andreas flashbacks to playing in the 8.
Maybe
We'd get similar frustrations.
I just feel like Josh One has played there a fair bit at a youth and international youth level, where he's played a little bit deeper rather than playing in the number 10 role. We've never really seen Emil Smith-Rowe do that. And I do wonder if there is an element of it that's, okay, dual 8s ahead of a 6, right? Like if it's Berger with King and Smith-Rowe in there, but they're expected both to get up and down, right? Like they're not asked, one of them is not the 10, one of them is not pushing into the front line to press. Like they are being asked to fulfill midfield roles as opposed to anything else. I'm intrigued by it. I don't know if Marco will go for it, if I'm honest. Like, it feels like the kind of risky maneuver that he might well avoid. The only thing is, he might try it in, like, the Cup against Middlesbrough. Like, that might be the kind of game that we see him try something like that, is what I was thinking. But
by that point, it's a little bit too late. Then the boys from AFCON are almost certainly back, unless they get to the final by the Middlesbrough game.
Yeah, but, like, that's kind of, before they win it, you mean. But, like, in terms of... I just don't see Marco going for it. I think he is going to revert to Berger Lukic. And again, I've made the point before and I'll make it again, that I think that you have to give those two players options from wide areas. You need to have dynamic wingers who are looking to get over the back. You need someone who's going to stretch the forward line as well, right? And I think if that happens, suddenly that looks a lot busier in the middle of the park and they're able to actually get those passes off. But they're going to have to step up. And ultimately, you look at it and say, okay, Alex Iwobi's doing a wonderful job in there at the moment. When he comes out, the next option, next man up is Sasha Lukic, right? Who's been excellent for the majority of his time at Fulham, right? It's in the last few weeks that we've really struggled with this partnership. And I'm not saying that this is right. I'm just putting it out there, and I think this will be Marco's thinking as well, that when Iwobi goes, the person who steps into that role is the person who's most suited to play in it, which is... within the squad build that we have, and Marco can rant and rave all he likes about not having another number 9 that he trusts. Now, this is the position that we needed in the summer. This is still the position we need now. He's going to look at Sasha, I think. Like, I would be absolutely stunned if in the Nottingham Forest game, after they leave, the starting midfield partnership is not Sander Berger and Sasha Lukic. Like, I would put an inordinate amount of money on it. Like, I just...
Reluctantly, I agree with you.
Like, and also, I think we have to... Like, people are going to be like, before we go into that game, right? And look, I can understand from where we've been and what we've seen from that before. But also, I think we have to give that... You have to give that opportunity at least once with Iwobi not there and having wingers out wide. And if that's Kevin and Harry or, whoever it looks like... You've got to look at that and say, okay, can you give them options? Can you give them spaces to work with? Can you get them a number 10 who's going to show for the ball constantly? Because we've not always had that in terms of in front of them. And maybe that changes the way that we look at that partnership in terms of midfield, in terms of, where they can get those passes off to and how we build the ball forward. So I would be stunned if it isn't that in the Forest game. If it doesn't work in the Forest game again and Fulham look completely and utterly blunt because of it, then I think you'll look at what Marco could potentially do differently. And I think he will then look at what he could do differently. But I'd put almost my house on the fact that he will go back to the tried and tested when he doesn't have the options available to him that he wants.
I agree with you, but actually I don't see why he couldn't and wouldn't go back to Berg Lukic in the Newcastle game.
Maybe.
It's a tough game, right? It's actually, going back to this whole...
And Sasha had his best game of the season up at St James's Park.
Yeah, going back to when you maybe should play it, even though I think the City game sort of disproved that theory. Also, the only thing to say in the Newcastle game is that a draw is a very, very good scenario for Fulham in that.
Yeah, because it goes to
penalties. And that's probably our best chance of progression at a difficult away game at St James's Park. So actually stifling Newcastle, frustrating that home crowd with Berg Lukic. If it doesn't work in that one, you actually wonder Monday night maybe.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair question.
He might open it up. I agree with you that I think we will return to default once Iwobi goes. And if it's a complete disaster at Newcastle, and let's say we lose 3 or 4-0, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility, sadly, then I think he might look, okay, it's Forest at home. We need to be progressive. Let's try and experiment with a King or obviously the one person that we're discounting that could play there is Tom Kearney.
Seth Ridgen.
Maybe. I mean, that really would be. That's
It'd
not.
be it would be a turn up for the books.
It's definitely
is what
not
that
on
would
my,
be.
that's not even on my Fulham bingo card this year. It's just Seth Ridgen turning up in midfield. A few more emails. There's loads to get through, so I want to rattle through a few of these. Toby Ward-Smith with a stat that I just hadn't really. I get it, but I just hadn't really clocked it. Hi, Fulhamish. Been wondering recently about our lack of penalties this year. It seems that our Harry Wilson-owned neighbours down the road have won a penalty every week this season, whereas we haven't been awarded a penalty since the 2-2 draw with Ipswich back in January.
Wow.
There's definitely a few 50-50 calls that we could have had this season that I can think of. King at Brighton, 2 against Villa, Kusi Asari against City. But we've definitely not had the luck of the refs' calls on these. And equally, we've conceded 3 pens ourselves in the first 3 games of the season. Do we think there's a reason behind why certain teams win more pens than others, e.g. tricky wingers, or strong in the dark arts of playing refs, or is it just pot luck? Maybe thinking too much into it. It's kind of the point of the podcast. Keep up the great work from Toby.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good email, so thank you, Toby.
Yeah.
What I do think is interesting is that actually, since Chukwueze has come into the team and started driving and wriggling into the box, we feel far more likely to actually pick something up in that regard. And actually, what we have seen with Fulham, and maybe part of this, has been a reliance on getting the ball down the flanks like over the years, right? And to Anthony Robinson, who'll swing one in, or a Willian who's sort of on the edge of the area trying to curl one in at the back stick. We've seen Harry Wilson, who likes to shoot, coming in on that inside, right? Like on his left foot. We don't really have players, or haven't had players, who kind of drive into the area in the same kind of way. And the first we've seen of that in a while is Josh King. And, as is pointed out there, there's a couple of, maybe not 50-50, but there's a couple of calls on Josh King that maybe go differently in other situations. And look, you can have your own opinions on whether they're penalties or not, right? It doesn't really matter. The point is that you're getting into situations where it's even a discussion because Josh King is sort of wriggling into those situations and trying to beat a player here and there, right? And I think that we're seeing similar with Chukwueze. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the second half of this season, as we see someone like a Sammy Chukwueze try to dribble into the box and actually take on players in those areas, Fulham's penalty count starts to go up. I don't necessarily think we're going to see that for the same from Kevin, for example, because despite the fact he's tricky, he likes to do his kind of tricky stuff on the flank. He hugs the touchline until he's coming in to kind of shoot or cross. So I don't think we're going to see the same amount of kind of him driving into the area. And look, I could be wrong on that, and maybe that's something that Marco Silva will look to kind of shift along. But I would be surprised if we don't start to pick them up once Chukwueze comes back, having seen what he does in those situations where he likes to kind of wiggle through a couple of players. They're the kind of driving runs that do win you penalties, and it's not something we've been great at doing for the last 7-8 months or so.
Yeah. This one from Nick Spindler, A-Up Gang, that's his words, not mine, was a game on Tuesday night. We got this email at the end of last week. Marco often asks for more from the Fulham crowd, and sometimes I admit it can be a bit flat, but I've never been at a match where I've seen us being so positive at 5-1 down. It felt like a perfect combination of an unshackled team being roared on a stadium who really believed. We would have clapped them off at 5-3, but at 5-4 pushing for a draw, it was the most magical game we've ever lost. I did believe all those times we played them, Man City were there to be got at, and wished we'd started with a more attacking lineup, but still, best game I've ever seen us lose. Love the pod, from Nick. I mean, interesting that we're talking about such a good atmosphere on Tuesday, because it wasn't a great atmosphere on Sunday, I didn't think.
It wasn't dreadful, I didn't think. I just thought it wasn't it didn't have the same kind of magical feel, right? And look, as we said at the time, as Nick points out, the atmosphere was weird against City because it went from kind of comedy to belief over the course of 20 minutes, and it was almost kind of a kind of black humor about it to begin with, right? It's the whole we're going to win 6-5. It's like the Wolves fans, when they gave up 9 minutes on the board and they were just singing "Blow the Whistle." It's there is an element of that you're just that's kind of self-deprecating humor that comes across, but it morphed from that into genuine belief. And I did think it would carry a little bit more into Sunday. I think maybe if we'd been the 2:00 game, it might have done. It just almost felt like I was in the pub beforehand, right? I was in the Duke of Cornwall, and it was just really quiet. And I wonder if the fact that it's 4 on a Sunday, just takes a little bit of the sting out of the game. In terms of, I think for a lot of people on the Tuesday or whatever, they would have come either straight from work or had a couple of drinks after work and come to the game, etc. Whereas on the Sunday, it almost felt like a bit of a sleepy way into the weekend, and next day going back to work and all of those things that come into play. it just didn't feel quite as like it was really easy to get beer at half time. It was really easy to get like the pub was near was empty. Those are the kind of things you'll be like, oh, it's a bit weird. Even if it wasn't empty in the stadium, like a bit of a strange kind of feeling in the concourses almost around it. So maybe it's just one of those. But
yeah. I think there was just a bit of a feeling of dread about that Palace game because I think we all kind of knew what might happen, and then when it did, and especially when Nketiah scored, I think it just completely just sucked the wind out of everyone. Where for the third time in a calendar year, we're watching Palace do a job on us. In fact, that's happened 3 times this year. It's just genuinely like...
Yeah, 2025 can get the bin.
This one from Andrew Stanley. You mentioned this. Can I make a suggestion? When defending corners, Josh King stays on or near the halfway line. This takes 2 opponents away from our area to look after Josh. Josh is nothing more than a nuisance defending corners, and this has the benefit of potentially a dangerous outball if we clear. I don't have to be a tactical genius to work this out. Maybe a job at Fulham for me. Andrew Stanley.
If you can get a job there, Andrew, can you let me know if I can be your assistant? Your job is the make Josh King stand on the halfway line at corners person. I'm so in. I totally agree.
This is from Oscar Allsop. I believe this is on the Telegram. He said, Silva blew up that game for us with some of the most nonsensical in-game management I think I've ever seen from a Fulham manager. Matt, who I assume is on the Telegram, said it reminded him of when Mark Hughes refused to make substitutions, but the opposite premeditated substitutions that had basis in the actual situation on the pitch. He should deserve little credit for his team selection as he's finally gone for the 11 that everyone was crying out for a month ago. Taking off ESR, Chuka and Berg was totally mindless. All were playing well and causing Palace problems. I think also we, as Fulham supporters, need to shake off our self-imposed label as refined and cultured football supporters every now and a while. It causes a bit of smugness and to be blinkered about some things. The players he brought on, Lukic, Traore and sadly Kearney, have no right whatsoever to get any minutes in the Prem. Silva's loyalty to them, square pegs in round holes regardless of game situation, lost us a game we should have won. We ended that game with a centre midfield of TC, Lukic and King. Bizarre given form. The sight of Jimenez bravely limping on until the final whistle was almost tragic. The second point is blind loyalty to Silva. He continues to string us along with his contract. Our form this year is appalling. The club should be looking for a successor now and let him know about it. He's been a great manager. I'm fond of him, but he thinks he has us over a barrel with his contract. Huge run of games coming up. We know where we will sit by New Year's Day.
Wow. I started that message. I started sort of nodding along, and I just so slowly started being like, "No."
I really like this though because I think sometimes we might live in a bit of an echo chamber. There's a lot of Fulham fans thinking like Oscar now.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, I don't necessarily disagree with like all of it. I think quite a lot of it's fair. One, I think it's disingenuous and incredibly recent-minded to suggest that Sasha Lukic is not a Premier League footballer. Like, this is a man who captained Torino in Serie A, who came into this Fulham team. Yeah, okay, took a little time to settle, but last year was a really important part of one of the best Fulham campaigns that we've seen in a long, long time. Like, to suggest that after a couple of poor games, and he has had a couple of poor games, some of his recent performances have been god-awful, like, that he's suddenly no longer a Premier League player, I think is extremely short-termist, at the very least, if not downright just incorrect. Like, okay. we've seen.
I agree that the Lukic.
I think that shouts unfair. Like, I think there are some points there. The Adama one. When was the last time, as Dan Cook said on the quick take, when was the last time we saw Adama do anything particularly good in a Fulham shirt? You have to go back to Forest last year.
End of last season, there was a couple of good assists, wasn't there? Like Southampton.
It hasn't been great for a while. But look, Marco does have somewhat of a blind loyalty to him. Like, not bringing on Kustisare for Raul, I completely agree with. And look, TC is a club legend. Whether he was the right man at that point, I struggle with it because I was also like, we need some control back in this game. And I didn't think Iwobi had anything left to give. And I don't know who the player you'd bring on there to actually, try and add that element of control into the midfield would be if it wasn't Tom Kearney. So that one I struggle with a little bit more.
The other thing about the Adama Kearney substitution, I don't know if this negates it because it wasn't like Silva couldn't have controlled this. We were making that substitution before the goal.
Yeah, but then I think you have to change it. Like, then I think it's within his remit and his purview to be like, right, okay, that might have been the right substitution at 1-0, but it's definitely not the right substitution at 2-1 down.
Yeah.
So, take that as you will, I suppose.
I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know at what point it's too late. Well, the only point it's too late is when the players have crossed the white line.
Correct.
But like, it does mean other players who aren't warmed up, ready, etc., having to do a quick change. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than we don't know.
I don't know, because
Maybe
actually when the two of them got called,
you can't be
there
asked.
was 5 players warming up together that were Adama and Kearney, but also Kusiasare, and there was a couple of others as well. I can't remember who it was. And I remember seeing them all come back together. When Adama and Kearney were called in to change, he also called the others back who'd been warming up at the same time. So there wasn't much in the difference in terms of who'd been asked to warm up or anything like that. So I can say that for sure, because I was watching to see who was coming on.
There was an element, by the way, as soon as it's 2-1 to Palace, I think we could have brought on Prime Ronaldo and Messi. I don't think we were going to equalise.
I agree
in that situation.
I think that Oscar's point is as in, I think he raises some good points. I do think still that unless Fulham could legitimately convince Liam Rosenior to take this job, I don't know if there is anyone out there that I would take ahead of Marco Silva. Still, right at this point, like I'm pretty hot on Rosenior, right? Like I think he's a really, really smart tactical manager. I think he's doing a wonderful job with Strasbourg. Equally, he has got a lot of very talented players there, and it's a jump. But I think he did a good job with Hull in the Championship.
At least he knows how to beat Crystal Palace.
He has, yeah, exactly. He has the experience in the club. He has the experience in the Championship. And I think that he would be, with his Fulham connection, the most sensible appointment Fulham could make if Marco Silva was to leave. Unless you could guarantee that he was going to come in mid-season, and I don't really see why he would, considering he's playing European competition with Strasbourg and...
Oh, come on. If we offered Liam Rosenior an active Premier League manager's job, he's leaving Strasbourg.
Okay, so you're sacking Marco Silva now?
No, I'm saying if mid-season the Fulham job's available...
But I'm saying, but to do that, you'd have to sack Marco Silva.
No, I'm not saying we should sack Marco Silva.
Okay, so we're saying... So the point making...
Unless I misunderstood you, you were saying that would Liam Rosenior leave Strasbourg to come to Fulham?
Yeah, I'm saying I think he'd do that maybe in the summer, if you had that conversation. But therefore,
if mid-season he's coming to the Premier League.
I don't think so. And also, it doesn't really make. It doesn't really make a difference, because there's no reason Fulham change manager mid-season unless we're going to get relegated.
No, I get that. But
so
and
if we're going to get relegated, we're definitely not bringing in a manager who has Champions League potential, right? Like that's the difference in terms of the game.
I think the lure of, it's not just the lure of Fulham. I think it's the lure of the Premier League. I think if we.
But what if he comes in at that point and they get sacked? Sorry, if he gets relegated, like does he immediately leave again? I don't know. Like, as in, I don't think.
As you say, it's pointless conversation. The only thing I will say on Oscar's email here, though, and I feared this would happen a month or two ago when a lot of us started talking about Silva's contract. There will become a tipping point where anger goes from being angry at the club towards anger at Silva, because this exact thought line will start appearing in the eyes and the minds of the fans, where it goes from actually the club aren't doing a good enough job at getting this, and actually at what point is Silva being belligerent about the contract and actually stringing Fulham along and thinking he's better than the club, etc. I don't necessarily think
there's a tipping point of all of those things, right?
Because the closer and closer it gets, if this is March, April, that kind of feeling about anger against Silva of, oh, do you think you're too good for us then? Will grow.
I still think that the majority aspect at games, etc., will still be sign the contract. Right, like it won't be.
No, I think it's gonna be a lot more just anger online rather than anger in the stands or anything like that. But but
there comes a tipping point, because if he's not going to stay and he's not going to sign a contract, I think he has to let Fulham know that. Like, I think that you can't be like, oh, I'll let you know in May, because if he's not going to sign a contract, Fulham need to start with the process of finding a successor. And I think it's only reasonable and fair to be like, I'm just going to see what comes my way, and then I might sign it in May if nothing's come up. Like, that's not really it either. So, like, he's done enough to earn the good graces for the time being. That doesn't last forever. Yeah. Right? Like, when these conversations have been about loyalty and things have been rationing all week, not about Fulham, obviously, but, they've been the majority talking point in the Premier League. They all still count.
Yeah. At least we haven't got, I'm trying to think, Jonah Kusiasare posting selfies in the gym.
Probably could do, to be fair, the amount of minutes he's got.
Right, that'll do for Fulhamish today. We'll be back with lots of coverage over the weekend, a quick take after the Burnley game, a podcast after the Burnley game as well. And thank you for supporting us on the website fulhamish.co.uk. Do make sure you sign up either as a free subscriber, you'll get all of our emails into your inbox, or if you become a paid subscriber, you'll get access to our Telegram, and you'll just be a legend because you'll be supporting all the work that we do here at Fulhamish, which we are truly grateful to all of our paid subscribers for helping keeping Fulhamish funded. Jack, thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Always a pleasure. It might be a while.
Maybe one last time.
This might
be our last dance in the studio for a little while. Thank you very much to Freddie on the buttons. Thank you very much to you for listening. And just before I finish, one more thing. We're doing a Christmas This'll Catch On next week. If you have, right, we've got lots of good chants, but we do want a couple of Christmas ones. So if you've got something in the works and it's Christmas themed, now is the time. We're not going to play it in January. So if it's in your mind, it's percolating, please send it in. We're going to be recording it early next week. So hello@fulhamish.co.uk for all your This'll Catch On submissions and your emails. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You whites.